Welcome to today's MDOT in Motion Micromobility webinar, hosted by the Maryland Department of Transportation. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Francine Waters, and I serve as the Multimodal Transportation Project Specialist at the Maryland Department of Transportation. And I'd like to bring up a few housekeeping reminders to everyone who has joined us. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted along with the past webinars for viewing on our MDOT in Motion website at Maryland's Bicycle and Pedestrian Plans and Programs MDOT site, and on our Complete Street website, mdot.maryland.gov/complete streets. The recording sessions will be made available in about 2 weeks on the Office of Active Transportation and Micromobility newsletter and event archive website. Please note that if you do not wish to be recorded, please leave before recording begins. AICP certified viewers of this live event are eligible to receive 1 CM credits from the American Planning Association. To receive AICP credits, visit the APA's website, planning.org, log into your account, and search for the name of today's event, or search for event number 9313418. It is important to note that the views expressed by the speakers are those of the speaker and not necessarily those of the Maryland Department of Transportation or the state of Maryland. Following the presentation, our presenters will answer as many questions as time permits. You can submit a question for the speakers at any time by using the questions tool located in the control panel on the right side of your screen. If you have administrative or technical questions, please use the chat function. And with that, I'll turn it over to Meg Young, Deputy Director of the Office of Active Transportation and Micromobility, to introduce our MDOT in Motion agenda. Meg?
Thank you so much, Francine, and good afternoon, everyone. We have such a high attendance rate for this webinar. Francine, I'll ask if you can take over admitting people from the lobby as I share my screen. So thank you all for joining us for this MDOT in Motion webinar. MDOT in Motion is a new series of webinars and interactive activities that our office has launched. The Office of Active Transportation and Micromobility is now about 3 years old. And the purpose of this series is to really show how programs and policies actually look on the ground. We want to highlight our multimodal projects and programs and how we are transforming transportation across Maryland. Our impact is to support a more connected and sustainable transportation network. So for today, we are focusing on micromobility in Maryland. And I know we have an audience here from across the country, not just from Maryland. So welcome to Maryland, everyone. A little bit to situate you here in our beautiful state. We have a population of about 6.2 million people, and under the Moore-Miller administration, our state goals include advancing infrastructure to better connect all Marylanders to opportunities and each other, as well as making Maryland a leader in clean energy and the greenest state in the country. So very pertinent to our topic today. And on the screen, you'll also see a map of our states with population density. The largest amount of our population is around the Baltimore metro and suburban DC. But Maryland is comprised of 23 counties plus the largest independent city in the nation, Baltimore City, to amount to that 6.2 million. We have a wide range of topography from the Eastern Shore and Chesapeake Bay region all the way over to Mountain Maryland and Western Maryland. So what you will hear about today, first of all, is just setting some groundwork about what micromobility is and who plays a role in governing micromobility. Then we'll hear from University of Maryland about how they encourage riding safely with their student population. Then we'll hand it over to Baltimore City, who has incredibly successful dockless vehicle program and about how they've designed that program to be equitable and improve access. And then look at the road ahead from here, and leaving some time at the end again for your questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. So, micromobility. In layman's terms, micromobility is a small vehicle. It is a small human or electric powered vehicle. They are all the new things we're seeing rolling down our streets, from e-scooters and e-bikes to one wheels. There's a wide variety of things that we are seeing. Maryland is one of the first states to have our state DOT take an active role in micromobility, because we've realized this trend is not going away. We're only seeing increasing ridership and adoption of these vehicles. So we've launched a new website about micromobility in Maryland that you can reference even after this webinar, to see the state's role in looking at mobility, policies around micromobility, and how to make adoption equitable. One thing to keep in mind as we talk about micromobility is we're looking at it in two different frameworks. First of all, there's personally owned vehicles. This is your neighbor who has an e-bike. It's the Domino's delivery guy who gets an e-bike to ride around. It is that person riding the one wheel. Wait, what is that vehicle? Does he have somehow a scooter with shocks? We're seeing all sorts of things coming down our roadways. And we're also seeing local jurisdictions encourage this adoption as a option for mode shift, get out of your car, by using e-bike vouchers and rebate programs. We've seen this around the country, and Baltimore City last year issued an e-bike voucher pilot program. So that is one form of micromobility. But the other one that we'll discuss pretty in depth today is the shared micromobility fleets. So this is not somebody who owns their own vehicle, but this is a bike share. In Maryland, the largest bike share is the Capital Bike Share program, based out of DC, which was also the first publicly owned bike share in the nation. And then we also have a number of jurisdictions that have dockless programs such as Lime, VO, Spin. These are private companies that have permits or contracts to operate in the public right-of-way and are governed by the local jurisdiction. And what we've seen with shared micromobility ridership is, first of all, we get a lot more data about it, and we can track it because the permitted companies have to submit their data. And from that, this is a graphic from the National Association of City Transportation Officials. We know that micromobility fleets are setting records. In 2024, Capital Bike Share actually had the most ridership in program history. So again, this trend is not going away. Not only are you going to see more of your neighbors with personally owned vehicles, but we see more and more ridership on these shared fleets. So from a regulation point of view, there's a couple of different players in the game as far as governing micromobility and what the hot topics are. This is how we've kind of broken it down in Maryland. The top, MDOT, is the Maryland Department of Transportation. We play a role in defining what vehicles are legal to ride on the roadways and how they can be ridden, the rules of the road. So it's in Maryland's Transportation Code. What is an e-scooter? What is an e-bike? There are different levels of e-bike, and where can they be ridden? What are the roles and responsibilities if you are riding one of these vehicles? MDOT is also responsible for setting standards for design so that we have safe places to ride micromobility. And through our MVA and our Highway Safety Office, we also have a responsibility to encourage safe riding and maintenance. Then we also work with our local governments who permit shared fleets and have ridership on their local roads. Local governments are responsible for permitting and encouraging equitable access to shared fleets. They have a portion of responsibility for safe riding and for proper parking as well. Then we cannot forget out of this mix that the vehicle owner, the vehicle rider, has a responsibility as well. For our streets to be safe, everybody needs to play a role and follow the rules of the road. And if you owned one of these vehicles, you're also responsible for maintaining your vehicle safely. So we each play a different role, and we're going to break that down a little bit today with our presenters. Now, how we got to this point in Maryland, it started with a micromobility working group. So on your screen, you see another map of Maryland with the jurisdictions who have had shared micromobility fleets within the past few years on the map. Again, this ranges from communities on the Eastern Shore to Metro DC. The working group had a couple of different goals. First of all, it was a venue for discussing shared micromobility program best practices, discuss issues with personally owned vehicles and issues related to batteries and maintenance. And then we set the goal for in 2025 to develop a shared permit language to have consistency across the Maryland market for shared fleets. And we've been using this group to direct MDOT's resources as we develop guidance for micromobility safety and for jurisdictions to implement micromobility permits. Lastly, we've also discussed some funding opportunities and grants that could increase ridership, expand programs, and encourage safe riding. So this group has been essential, and the two that are in bold are who we're going to hear from today. Baltimore City, that has the dockless vehicle program, and University of Maryland College Park, that has both a dockless vehicle service contract, they have capital bike share outside of the campus, and a growing number of personally owned vehicles. So with that, I'll hand it back to Francine to introduce our two speakers for today.
Thank you, Meg. I now have the pleasure of introducing our speakers for today's webinar. Marta Woldu is the Assistant Director of Sustainability Initiatives at the University of Maryland's Department of Transportation Services. Marta and her team champion sustainable transportation programs and advances on UMD's campus through its Smart Commute Bike UMD and Micromobility program. She has launched campus-wide e-scooter, e-bike education initiatives, and led several active transportation infrastructure initiatives. Marta holds a master's in community planning from the University of Maryland School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation, with a focus on transportation. She is a DMV native and is passionate about building safe, connected, and climate-friendly mobility systems that serve diverse communities. Melina Anderson is a rising junior at the University of Maryland, where she is majoring in criminology and criminal justice. She joined the Bike UMD team 4 months ago. In her role, she works to promote safe and responsible bike and scooter riding and parking on campus. After graduation, she aims to use her degree to become a homicide investigator. And Tyler Smith, Dockless Vehicle Program Manager, Baltimore City Department of Transportation. Tyler has been the Dockless Vehicle Program Manager for Baltimore City since August 2024. Prior to that, he worked for Alta Bicycle Share and Motivate LLC in capital bike share operations for over 10 years as a mobile mechanic, department manager, and station installation team manager, performing over 45,000 bike inspections and leading the team that installed over 200 stations across the DMV. He enjoys volunteering as a mobile mechanic for Baltimore Bike Party, growing vegetables, and throwing plastic discs into baskets. Welcome, Marta. Welcome, Melina. Welcome, Tyler. And with that, Marta, would you like to kick off the presentations?
Oh, Marta, we can't hear you. And we did hear you during our sound check. So please allow Marta 1 second to make sure her mic is working. Oh no. Marta, we still cannot hear you. All right, Marta is going to go and come back. But as we heard from Francine, we'll be hearing from Marta and her student intern, Melina, about riding safe at the University of Maryland. They have both regulations for their shared fleet. They contract VO. I don't want to steal all of her talking points, but they also, with a growing number of personally owned micromobility devices, have a really amazing education program for all students who bring their own vehicles onto campus. So as soon as she gets her mic working again, we'll hear from Marta. Apologies for the technical difficulties.
Okay, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome back, Marta.
Fantastic. Thank you all for your patience. And thank you all, Meg and Francine, for the great introductions and tee up on our topic today. We're really excited to be presenting today. It's been front and center for us at the University of Maryland for a while, as well as a lot of our peer institutions. So we're really happy to have a cohesive effort with our Maryland partners in the state DOT. So you can go to our next slide. I'm going to be providing a little bit of background context about our campus environment. Then I will begin presenting a bit about our campus regulations and our management strategies for the growing volume of micromobility vehicles that we're seeing. It is a pretty impressive increase that we're observing on campus as we're observing major shifts in just how people get around. And we are pretty proud of a lot of the strides that we've taken. So we're excited to share that with you today. And then lastly, I'll turn my presentation over to my partner, Melina here, who's going to be sharing her expert tips for riding safely if you're a micromobility rider. Next slide. And next slide. Kicking off with some background about the university. We are the flagship institution of the University System of Maryland, and we are based in College Park, which is centrally located on the Baltimore-Washington corridor. It is about 1 mile away from the Green Line metro station in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Fun fact, we are also currently in the middle of construction of the Purple Line light rail project, and that's going to go right through the heart of our campus. So imagine hopping on a train in Bethesda or New Carrollton and being able to commute car-free straight to class. We're really excited, and that vision is really on the cusp in our very near future. Historically, we have been a commuter campus, but in recent years, with growing development and housing moving closer and nearer to campus, we are seeing positively a lot less of a reliance on cars, and more people are turning to walking, biking, e-bikes, and e-scooters to get around. We are a gold level bicycle-friendly university. We also sit connected to the Anacostia Heritage Trails system, so there is a vast network of multimodal connections around our campus that that make it easy for people to get around without their car. So while our campus environment and feel is changing, we're noticing it's changing with the electric devices are picking up a lot faster than anyone really anticipated. So we're seeing a more pedestrianized and more dynamic population and transportation system, and it's prompting us to rethink a lot of our strategies for managing this multimodal environment. We'll go to our next slide. And this is kind of a reflection of our national trends, and what we are seeing locally is not just unique to us, but as you can see on our charts, we have record-breaking trends in shared micromobility trips over the course of a little bit over a decade, with steady and deliberate growth in that space. And a lot on the chart on the right, you can see some reflections on the private market and some projections where there's a much sharper and more accelerated growth there. And I think this is a part of a broader shift of just, again, how people are moving, especially our younger populations, as we're observing. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we have, and Meg mentioned earlier, we have both shared and privately owned devices on our campus. We have VO's dockless system operating. We also have a docked system with capital bike shares extension just on the edge of our campus. And then in recent years, we've seen a really sharp adoption of the personal micromobility vehicles. So in addition to the national market conditions around these vehicles, they're increasingly affordable, they're convenient, and they're fast and really helping support people with their first and last mile connections. We also think a couple of other trends or factors are contributing to this, like just the size of our campus. We are nearly 1,300 acres wide, and we also have really hilly topography. So you bet you that electric boost can really help get you from one point of campus to the other, especially on a hot day. So with that, we are that sharp increase. We've observed some challenges that are clear signals that we need some additional work and management is needed in this area. Some of that has to do with infrastructure gaps, like where people can ride in our shared road system. We see a lot of sidewalk riding or inappropriate riding on the roadways, but also limitations on parking and charging. But in addition to that, it's also a lot of it has to do with behaviors and how limited experience amongst our riders, our drivers, and our travelers in integrating with each other. So all of this has been clear to us. Again, more attention needed, more management. We can go to the next slide. With this understanding, our aim has really been to consider how we can accommodate these new modes of travel proactively, but also not just accommodate them, but really think about various touch points from our management system. We need to appropriately educate, regulate, and integrate micromobility into our transportation system. As Meg said earlier, they're not really going away. So what can we do to really build a systems approach? We borrowed a lot of strategies heavily from the 5 E's framework. If you're familiar with the League of American Bicyclists 5 E's framework, with some adaptations. This one has 6 on here, which incorporates equity, which is always key. Especially we think of e-scooters and e-bikes as an equity component, as a lot of people who don't have cars are truly beginning to rely on them for first and last mile solutions and completing their commute gaps. So how does this work from a management standpoint on a campus? When some perceive micromobility as a toy and a tool or a nuisance, and others really are coming to rely on it. Well, here's a nice graphic of our artwork from one of our campaigns. Our tagline is, with great speed comes great responsibility. So as we are integrating e-micromobility devices onto our campus, we really want to strengthen the understanding of a rider's rights and their responsibilities when they're bringing a device to campus. We also want broader campus community understanding about the role that they play in our transportation ecosystem and how we can all contribute to a shared and respectful experience on our campus. Next slide. So one of the first things we did when we noticed a pretty significant uptick in e-scooter devices on campus, we thought it was wise to launch a mandatory registration system. So this kicked off in fall of 2023. Prior to that, we had bike registration that was not mandatory or enforced in any way, but heavily encouraged. But given the large volume and given the electric battery component, it was pretty obvious that we needed to have, as I mentioned, some stronger connection points to this audience. So the registration system that we launched was integrated into our parking registration system that allowed us to make our system as smooth as possible. Every student or faculty or staff member who is bringing a scooter or an electric bike to campus is required to come to our office and pick up a registration sticker. And what this offered was an essential communications channel for every vehicle owner. It also provided a record of ownership to the owners themselves and allowed us to support the campus to support with any vehicle recovery if they're lost or stolen. And then last but not least, this was really essential and valuable for us as management teams to think about just understanding really clearly how many devices are actually operating on our campus. When we launched this program, we thought we were somewhere in the ballpark of 1,000 vehicles. But when and we've ordered about 1,000 stickers for a registration program. Within our first year, we registered 2,400 devices, which blew a lot of our minds. And we were, again, it validated our thinking in setting up this system. Next slide, please. With this key registration, registration really served as a good foundation for us with it setting a good baseline. An understanding of how we can reach our audience, we in our next year developed on this program and iterated it. We decided to use this touch point to couple it with intentional mass education efforts. So while in our first year, we did a lot of safety campaigns and broadcasting communications, in our second year, we actually designed a virtual training course, which consisted of 6 short modules with 2 short quizzes after each module. So it's just short enough to reinforce a message and verify learning during the course without taking too long or being a deterrent for individuals who really we want to go through the registration process. At the end of the course takers earn a certificate, which is required for registration. And this has been just a really helpful way to make sure that every device user is getting at least some basic foundational knowledge before they hit the road. And you can see the topics covered in each of our modules. This was really designed around Maryland state laws and our campus specific regulations. And, it has B-roll footage of our campus environment and references our offices. So we really wanted to be clear to students coming to campus with their device, what it means to bring their device to our campus, since laws and regulations and norms are a little different in other jurisdictions. Next slide. Throughout the course, we also guide viewers with a series of questions to help them really understand also, is an electric bike or scooter the best choice for them? We think it's a really amazing tool, amazing vehicle that can go a long way in reducing the car trips, but it's really not always the best option for individuals. So, we're providing guiding questions to students, parents, and families who might be inclined to purchase a device, or they might see another person with a device and think, oh, that's a great use. But there's a number of things to think about, such as, do you understand what the regulations are on campus? Are you prepared to adhere to them? Do you have a plan for repairs and maintenance? One pretty important item for us is that we have a full restriction across our campus that electric micromobility devices cannot be brought on campus, on buildings, inside of our buildings, I'm sorry. That's e-bikes, e-skateboards, or e-scooters. Of course, that doesn't include any assistive devices. So with that, if you're a resident student and there's not a suitable charging, that's something we really want you to think about as you're going through this course. Next slide. Other really valuable messaging to include in our education materials is really about battery safety. And one thing that has been really top of mind for all of us is that limited information amongst our public that not all lithium-ion powered devices are made equally. And unfortunately, there are a lot of devices still in the market that are available for purchase that are not independently regulated or factory tested. So some of these have poorly made batteries that can pose a risk of catching on fire. So particularly if it's damaged or at risk of overcharging. So we incorporate a lot of education into our messaging, and we really tell users to look for a UL certification sticker. They also have to self-certify during their registration process that their device is UL compliant. Next slide. And next, I want to touch on enforcement. We have such a fast young and rotating population. We get a new freshman class every year that needs additional education and touch points. And through this process, enforcement plays a really critical role in not really being a method just for punitive measures or punishment for the sake of it, but it really plays a critical role in just helping people learn what the rules are and adopt safe behaviors and become part of a responsible micromobility culture. So we have listed here on the screen some different violations that we're tracking. So in our department, we're really active with non-moving violations efforts. We've really scaled up efforts, and one of the ways that our registration system is mandated is we actually go and check if vehicles are unregistered. So compliance is very high. Our numbers are pretty accurate, and we do have a record of every student who is owning a device. We're also really active about and on top of addressing parking violations. And then our campus police department is actively monitoring for moving or traffic violations. So students can receive a warning. Most times they'll receive a warning, but at times they can, if they're in really egregious situations or repeat offenses, they could be issued citations for violations that are causing risk to themselves or others, such as riding against traffic or blowing through stop signs. And then lastly, this effort is also valuable where the UMD community members who are experiencing impacts negatively have an opportunity to report. So one of the most common reports that we're getting is improperly parked vehicles, or specifically vehicles that are locked to access ramps and blocking ADA access for people with disabilities. That's something that our office is able to respond really well to because the university has adopted a 311 reporting system. Next slide. And of course, in the we would be remiss if we didn't think about really good design solutions for this changing world of micromobility and transit-oriented and campus environments. So we're really in a great time as a university where we're leveraging a lot of good planning and design solutions and thinking about how the different modes can harmonize together. We've had some real amazing successes recently with expanding our campus bikeways effort that's underway. And we can shout out MDOT and the bikeways program for supporting us with a feasibility and design study for preliminary efforts that have really allowed us to make some strong strides here. Other areas where we're really putting our focus attention on is expanding bike and micromobility parking and expanding and incentivizing shared services like our VO fleet or our capital bike share fleet, and then opportunities for public transit are ongoing conversations. And then lastly, what I'd like to touch on is evaluation. This is, of course, an emerging mode, and it requires really iterative and ongoing evaluation for success. This is an evolving space, and new regulations are being developed. So that's really critical for the long-term sustainability and integration of this mode. On our campus, we've also convened a diverse group of stakeholders in our campus micromobility work group to support our efforts. That includes our transportation office, but also the campus police, our fire marshal's office, our housing points of contact, an ADA coordinator, and many student leaders and others. Since it was pretty clearly understood that, while it's a transportation topic, it touches so many different areas from a regulatory standpoint. So bringing together such a cross-functional team allowed us to be really holistic and integrated about our approach and understand pretty regularly what needs adjustments. We have also improved communication. And so through this work group, we're able to disseminate messaging, receive feedback, coordinate on various solutions in real time. Together, we've also been really proactive about collecting data pretty systematically and conducting assessments. This work group has also been, this slide, great. Also been active in developing new recommendations for future, looking ahead, both in the short term and in the long term. and it's been successful in getting our recommendations adopted. So we're actually in the midst of a rollout of some new changes for this upcoming academic year, which includes moving registration from a biannual process to an annual process. This will actually really support our counts and make a lot of our evaluation a lot sharper, and our understanding of our vehicles on campus a lot sharper. We have other restrictions in place coming to where we were discouraging resident students from bringing personally owned devices. That's actually moving to a full restriction. So we won't even be registering them in this upcoming fall semester. We also have recommendations around strategies that can increase the adoption of protective equipment, such as helmets and lights, that we're also going to be rolling out, as well as some long-term strategies that I mentioned earlier with the engineering solutions. So with that, I am to turn it over to Melina, and where she can share her big tips on safe micromobility use. I just got a chat from her actually that I think she got booted out of the session, so she might need a minute.
I see Melina back on our list. Melina, are you available to come off mute and can't hear you though.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you, Marta. Yeah, so this is a few of my key tips if you are a micromobility rider or if you're interested in becoming a micromobility rider. So the very first thing, very important to do, if it is available to you, is to register your device with your local community or university. This provides a record of ownership and increases the chances of recovery if said vehicle is ever lost or stolen. University of Maryland now requires annual registration. It may be different for other institutions, but regardless, I encourage you all to register your device. The second tip is to charge up and gear up. So you want to know where you're going and also what the weather looks like during your commute from point A to point B. Maryland especially has really unpredictable weather, so it's important to be as prepared as possible. So, lights are very important. Just because you can see others does not mean that they can see you. Wearing reflective lights, wearing bells, all of that is super important, as well as wearing a helmet. It's one of the most important things you can do. It significantly reduces the chance of brain injury should you end up in an unfortunate collision or fall off your device. And safety can also be stylish. You can decorate your helmet like you do with your phone case, ride in style. And finally, for this point, please, please, please don't wear headphones when you're riding. These cause so many collisions and unfortunate accidents. Riding safely and riding predictably is the best thing you can do. It's important not to obstruct any senses when you're riding a micromobility device, or really any device. So the next point here is riding predictably to get to your destination better. So on our campus, we have a 15-mile-per-hour posted speed limit. Obviously, on other institutions, it might be different, but regardless, sticking to that posted speed limit sign on campus helps avoid accidents. It's also super important not to swerve or weave in between others, as they cannot predict your movements. So riding predictably is the best way to ride safely and to get to your destination in one piece. Stopping at stop signs and red lights. You're not invisible to traffic laws. Traffic laws still apply to you. And lastly, for railroad tracks, UMD is currently building the Purple Line on our campus. So if you're going to be riding anywhere that there are train tracks, please remember to cross the train tracks at a 90-degree angle. Bikes and scooters, tires can get stuck in the tracks if you cross them at a shallow angle. So always aim to cross at a perpendicular angle. Next, if you could go to the next slide. So this slide is a reference slide from our micromobility training. If you purchase an electric bike or scooter, you definitely want to consult your manual and understand key components of your vehicle, like how to operate your device, how long your battery lasts, and how you can get it serviced if it needs repairs. Next slide, please. And finally, this is our social media for education page. We have some hyperlinks here to some of our reels. We've continued education efforts on our social media, and I want to encourage you all to scan this QR code and follow our Instagram. Our team has made fun and short reels on safe riding, parking guidance, and it's a really good resource to follow and look into. So
Thank you so much, Marta and Melina. Got their contact information on the screen. And next up, we're going to go to Tyler Smith to hear about the program in Baltimore City.
Thank you, Meg. All right, next slide, please. So what we're focused on today is talking about how one can design equity into micromobility. And our discussion is going to center on the dockless vehicle program in Baltimore City, which has been in existence since 2019. And we're going to look at the growth of ridership beyond what is characterized as the white L in Baltimore. Next slide, please. So if you're not familiar with Baltimore, it's the most popular city in the state of Maryland with 585,000 people. It is the 30th most populated city in the country. The metropolitan area is about 2.8 million people. It is an old city founded in 1729, and our current mayor first won election in 2020. Next slide, please. So if you're not familiar, the white L literally refers to the letter L, the shape the letter L takes. So with a north-south component and then an eastern component coming off of that north-south axis. And this is a term coined by Professor Lawrence Brown at Morgan State University. And he took a look at geography and race and historical patterns of real estate deals and bank loans, and just kind of how the legacy of segregation in Baltimore City has resulted in a fairly segregated city, with the black butterfly being the northeast and northwestern parts of the city, and the white L being like a central corridor that then kind of turns to the east. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, this is really the result of what's called redlining and our legacy of segregation in Baltimore City. Literally, parts of town were rendered unavailable for bank loans, making it really difficult to achieve home ownership. And those parts of the city that were redlined were the predominantly Black parts of the city. Furthermore, about 1 in 3 Baltimore City residents do not own a car. Next slide, please. So here you can see a distribution of residents by race, with the light sort of greenish bluish color representing white residents. Thank you for the cursor help there. And the yellow parts of the city showing the Black residents in Baltimore City. So you can really kind of see the wings of the butterfly in this slide, and you can see the green L going through the center of town and then kind of headed toward the east along the harbor is the white L. Next slide, please. So what I left out of my bio is that I grew up in Baltimore City. In fact, right where that green arrow is pointing, in the greater Charles Village, Barclay area. The vacancy rate in that area is only 2.7%. Only 3 miles away in Sandtown, Winchester, you've got 10 times the vacancy rate at 22%. That is in fact where Freddie Gray was arrested and ultimately died, unfortunately, in 2015. But very characteristic of Baltimore City for there to be drastic differences in terms of the built environment over pretty small differences in terms of where they're located. And you see other patterns emerge in terms of the white L and the black butterfly when it comes to income, lead poisoning, rat infestation, how close you are to a bank, if there is a lot of youth gun violence happening, how people are voting, and lots of other examples. So you see it almost everywhere when it comes to the city in terms of measurables and maps. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, a lot of folks do not own a car or a truck. 27% to 1/3. You see both statistics in different sources. of Baltimore City residents do not have access to a vehicle. And then more broadly in the metro area, 1 in 10 households do not have access to a vehicle. But also here, you can make out the white L going through the center of town and the darker colored black butterfly in the northeast and northwest areas. Next slide, please. So we have a dockless vehicle program. It launched in 2019. There was a pilot program happening somewhat before that, but also into 2019. We currently have 2 operators, Spin and Lime, and they provide our residents with a fleet of about 4,500 e-scooters and about 750 e-bikes. Next slide, please. So, do we see the white L in micromobility? Yes, we do. Based on this ridership data from 2019, you can see the dark sort of bluish purple area of town. You can read the letter L right there. And in the eastern and western parts of town, you see much lower ridership in the first year of the program. Next slide, please. So our host today, Meg Young, actually had my position at that time, and working with a few other folks, helped implement a bunch of approaches sort of aimed at increasing adoption of these dockless vehicles as a means of travel around the city, not just in the white L. And some of those measures are the equity zones with required deployments. Deployment districts refers to the idea that you cannot have less than 5% of your fleet in any one district of the city, and you cannot have more than 25% of your fleet in any one part of the city. Access program refers to our income qualified program for residents in Baltimore City. That's about 1/5 of Baltimore City residents qualify for this program for discounted rides. Public education efforts are both from the city as well as from our permit holders, our operators, Lime and Spin, who attend lots of events around the city to educate folks about the vehicle's availability as well as the access program. And compliance monitoring is rather my role in terms of making sure that our operators are following these requirements set forth by Meg. Next slide, please. So the equity zones are 12 zones, as you can see, pretty well distributed throughout the city. They are mandatory deployment sites. So Lime has to put 4 vehicles every morning at each of these sites. Spin has to put 4 vehicles every morning at each of these sites between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m., with the intention being there being a consistent presence of vehicles available. People can see them, people know where to expect them, and it helps build the sense that this is a reliable transportation option that you could use every day to get to work or to get to school or to do what you need to get done. The zones were chosen based on underserved areas during the pilot program, and as well as they looked at equity-related demographic measures, including how many households are in poverty, how many households have access to private vehicles, what kind of proximity to transit lines are we talking about here, population density, as well as racial demographics. Next slide, please. And then here are the different deployment districts, right? So where you see the word Baltimore is sort of the inner harbor downtown core. The concern might be that a dockless vehicle operator might concentrate almost all of their vehicles in that area, and folks living in very South Baltimore or far Northeast Baltimore might not have access to the dockless vehicles because the operators are really just kind of chasing the money or the tourist money in the downtown area. So part of my job is just making sure that no more than 25% of all vehicles are in any one district and no less than 5% of vehicles are in any one district. Next slide, please. So the access program. Just recently in 2025, I was able to get both of our operators together and we were able to negotiate a standard access program offer. What we landed on is an 80% discount across all fares, limited to 4 rides per day with no unlock fees, which amounts to about 10 cents per minute for qualified residents of Baltimore City. We then made 80% the new floor, the new minimum in the program rules, and also put into the program rules that operators must in fact ask for approval to try to deviate from that access offer. And because that's the minimum, if they were to deviate, they would have to make a more generous offer than 80% off. And both operators host events like you see here pictured with Spin in their tent, and also inform riders via pop-up notifications in their app. If you left from an equity zone, you're going to learn about the access program. So trying to get the word out that way. Next slide, please. So the compliance monitoring is my role here at Baltimore City Department of Transportation. I make sure that these deployment district requirements are being met, the equity zone requirements are being met. I make sure that no individual vehicle sits in the same spot for more than 5 days in a row. And the scores that the companies receive on all of these metrics are used to determine their eligibility for fleet cap increases. Also, along with the access program metrics and the vehicle inspection results, they can also be subject to warnings and citations and loss of automatic renewal of their permit if they're not meeting these goals consistently. Next slide, please. So what this all amounts to is we're encouraging the operators not just to chase the money, but also seek to serve the entire city, providing reliable daily transportation options in areas not well served by public transportation. So that's filling the gaps in our transportation network is the idea there. And the residents near the equity zones, during the pandemic especially, would see every morning plenty of vehicles in their neighborhood that are pandemic safe. They're there every day. You don't have to look to see where they are in your smartphone. And this just kind of establishes the dockless vehicles as a consistently viable option, especially for essential employees at that time who had to get to work and might not necessarily be able to get to work safely via another method of transit at the time. Next slide, please. All right, so what we're seeing here is from 2019 to 2024, the growth of ridership in the system. So where we start is from a clear white L, and as we move along in the years, you can see it grow into really just encapsulating the entire city of Baltimore. And the next slide, we'll have a side-by-side so you can get a clearer sort of understanding of what we're talking about. So here you have on the left, the 2019 ridership. You see the white L. On the right, what you see is a map of Baltimore City with big growths in ridership, especially in that northwest corridor, which serves the Baltimore subway system, but also in northeast Baltimore, folks going out Bel Air, Harford Road. Really just tremendous success. I'm really just the shepherd for a system that Meg and others who were here before me helped set up. And of course, a lot of the effort into this is from our partner operators, Lime and Spin, who have been getting the word out about the access program. Next slide, please.
Tyler, if I may, we are a little short on time, so
okay.
I want to put the links to both of these on there so that we can answer a few questions at the end, but wanted to give you that heads up to go through these pretty quickly.
Gotcha. So there was a Bloomberg Journal of Health study on the equity zones and who was using them during the pandemic, and you can check that out via the links. Next slide, please. And we also got some media attention. Dan Rodricks wrote this article about how the scooters and e-bike system is being expanded into all parts of the city with quotes from local bike advocate Bike More, as well as, next slide, please. We got some quotes from both Lime and Spin regarding their operations in this market. Go ahead and advance. There we go. And so looking ahead, I actually forgot to update the first line here. We did standardize the access program that was just recently, but continuing to grow it now that we have a standard offer is a big goal. Making sure those vehicles are safe and operable is a big focus of mine. Encouraging our operators to engage the community and let people know about the access program and about their services in general. I also work with stakeholders to address concerns about the program. I think every dockless program deals with people parking improperly and blocking access for other individuals to public spaces, or dangerous riding behavior, which we of course are working hard to curb. And looking forward to also integrating the system more with other local services like the Charm City Circulator bus service and the Harbor Connector ferry. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, it is possible to encourage wider adoption of dockless vehicles, but it does take effort, and it does take consistent application of rules, looking to make sure that there is a good disbursement of the vehicles across the city, making sure that people who might not be able to afford the vehicles have an option that they can use, and also having a staff member there to kind of shepherd that all through is all very important. And that is it. I'm going to kick it over to Meg at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tyler, Marta, and Melina, for all these presentations. I will try to go really quickly so we can answer just a few questions, and we might stay on past 1 o'clock to answer burning questions. But what's ahead for micromobility in Maryland? Our path forward for micromobility was really slated in our 2050 Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, which we adopted last year in January of 2024. That is what prompted us to form a working group and to start really addressing these safety issues and to encourage more ridership from a state level. So in that Bike Ped Master Plan, we have a whole chapter about micromobility and dockless vehicles. There's a number of recommendations that came out of that do apply to both personally owned and shared fleets, all in an effort to reach the vision of safe and convenient active transportation that supports equitable access for all. So for both shared and personally owned, developing more safety guidance, developing more parking and roadway design guidance that will promote usage and connect people to transit. Specifically for shared fleets, creating operational guidance for jurisdictions. And then for personally owned vehicles, we want to work towards a potential e-bike rebate program. So how are we addressing this in our plans for the next year at MDOT? We are tackling these through kind of 2 work products we're working towards. The model permit is the shared contracting language in an effort to create a stable market, and it applies to shared fleets and their riders. So it includes toolkits about safety and engagement, access programs, and parking of shared fleets. Then we also want to do point of sale and safety education for personally owned vehicles about e-vehicle maintenance and safe charging procedures. This would include some information about fire safety and be another touch point about riding safely. The goals of this, again, for a model permit, stabilize the market, help users understand what is expected of them and understand the offerings, and by having consistency, really require higher standards for safety and access that benefits all Marylanders. For our point of sale goals, our goals are to reduce fire and battery incidences, to help owners maintain safe vehicles and create a more informed workforce at bicycle retail shops. And then with these touch points for riders, broaden general knowledge of the rules of the road and inform e-bike users. We have a very short time for Q&A. Marta and Tyler, if you want to join me back on screen, we have a lot of questions and can follow up with people asking them after the fact. To group them together, Francie and I have been reading them all along. If you want me to share how I've grouped them.
I think, and I think perhaps we can pose these questions to our presenters and provide their answers after the webinar at sometime in the next week or 2.
Right. So one question was simply about the data that we're using, and I can answer that one pretty quickly. I've just shared the link to see Baltimore's public data, but Tyler shared so many great maps. We use MDS, the mobility data specification is used for dockless vehicles, and it's reported to the city. I think that was the extent of that question. There's a lot of questions about infrastructure, and I can answer that from the state perspective, and then I'm sure Tyler and Marta might want to answer from their perspectives. At Maryland DOT, we updated our complete streets policy last year with all of our modes signing on, and that details a new process for creating streets that are safe for everyone. There's a new process being rolled out to consider multimodal accommodations on all projects in the MDOT right-of-way. So anytime we initiate a repaving, a streetscaping, multimodal accommodation has to be considered. What we are following as far as accommodating micromobility is that they are defined similar to bicycles in our state code and should share facilities with bicycles. So we are encouraging more shared use paths and safe bicycle facilities to accommodate micromobility. As part of our Complete Streets implementation, we'll be checking all locally adopted plans. So if there's a bike ped master plan that details somewhere the jurisdiction wants to have a safe facility for bicycles, then our SHA would take that into consideration. The other thing I think Tyler and Marta can probably speak more to is that while they are considered the same as bicycles, you do have to take into account that somebody riding micromobility might be new to it, and the amount of like signage and wayfinding is a little different than somebody who rides where they're going on a bicycle every day for the past 10 years. But Marta and Tyler, I know y'all have some pretty innovative signage and wayfinding in your jurisdictions, so I'll stop.
I mean, so we do have corralled like preferred parking locations with signage to let users know where they can get a discount for parking. And that also, of course, shows up on the apps. And of course, I work alongside Baltimore City's bike and mobility multimodal lane planners. So moving the ball forward in terms of making safe spaces for people to ride scooters and e-bikes is actually a big factor in increasing ridership in dockless systems.
Do you want to speak to any of the added signage that y'all have around campus for like crossing tracks or shared spaces where micromobility riders are operating?
That was for Marta, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I don't know if she's having more trouble with her microphone. Okay. We will be posting this slide deck. There are questions about how the evolving U.S. Department of Transportation policies and guidance are impacting our programs. Right now at MDOT, we are still working through the last year of appropriations for the bipartisan infrastructure law. So what the future holds, we are not 100% sure. Right now, we are rolling with regulations as they come and still trying to provide access for all Marylanders. We do expect there might be some changes as to what is allowable and what isn't, but Maryland still remains committed to our principles and our state goals. We have several types of funding available for safe facilities that are state funded and not totally reliant on federal funding. Tyler, are you seeing any impacts in Baltimore?
I don't think I'm really qualified to speak to that right now, but I do see a different question that I'm interested in addressing, which is data on usage patterns by vehicle types and any difference in demand for bikes versus scooters. This is something I think about a lot because Baltimore City does not have the best pavement surfaces in terms of there not being massive cracks and bumps that could potentially contribute to someone having a crash. So I personally am more comfortable on a bike than I am on a scooter. I think a lot of riders, older riders or riders who grew up maybe riding a bicycle but don't have experience using a scooter, might prefer to have a larger wheel and a place to sit while they ride. So one of my main focuses in this program has been to try to increase the number of e-bikes that are available in this market, because we do have some challenging surfaces for people to ride on.
All right, other hot topic questions. Marta and Melina, are you still with us? The student response been to on-campus regulations, and how are you responding to concerns? Oh, we've lost Marta and Melina. I see there's also questions about managing enforcement of vehicles on UMD. I have heard this. Oh, Marta has dropped a response in the question Q&A, so you should have a response there. They do have faculty and staff who are micromobility riders who are also required to register and undergo training. So it is not just for students, it is for professors and staff as well. And question about how you are enforcing. I know you work with VO to encourage parking and have required parking at bicycle racks around campus. So along with that parking requirement to park at a bike rack, University of Maryland has made a big effort to increase the number of bike racks. So if you can only park at a bike rack, then there needs to be enough bike racks around campus. With that, I'm sorry, I think we're going to have to respond to the rest offline. We are well over time now, but we want to thank everyone for joining and invite you to join us for future MDOT in Motions in August. We are going to talk about back to school safety. In September, we'll be talking about transportation trails in the community. And then in October, it's Walktober, and we will have weekly webinars and in-person walking events. Thank you all for your time today and for joining us. For those of you who have stayed on an extra 7 minutes. On your screen is a QR code for a survey if you can tell us how you heard about this, and any future topics that you would like to hear. We greatly appreciate it.